Hi, I'm John from What Mountain Bike magazine.
And I'm Tom from What Mountain Bike.
So we'd like to talk to you today about snow duro. It's the latest craze. Actually it isn't, it's a term we made up because we've heard a lot about snow bikes really, about fat bikes in general, haven't we?
Yep.
And that got us thinking, if you went somewhere with proper hills and lots of snow, which bike would be better, a fat bike or just a normal mountain bike?
We went to the French Alps in January because there are a lot worse places to go in January. And then we met a group of friends out there based around Bike Village Holidays, a little plug, who put us up for a few days. And we headed up into the hills and rode our various different bikes down the hills to really kind of see what worked where and what didn't work where.
Again, there are a few categories with snow duro. Obviously you have to do a climb to get to the top. And then we had various descents. So we had some hard packed descents like little natural single tracks. And then we thought we'd hit some powder fields as well, some really steep little gullies and chutes. Certainly on harder packed snow and on small climbs, fat bikes, just much better. That big tyre, you get a big footprint, there's much less wheel spin. You can actually just sit there, pedal gently uphill and it's all good.
That whole sort of float thing fat bikers love to talk about kind of does actually work. You know, 4 to 5 inch tyres at low pressures just spread the weight a little bit better over sort of that soft snow so the tyres aren't digging, and you can see in the tyre tracks. You know, a trail bike was leaving a little groove in there, whereas the fat bikes was a much smaller groove and therefore less resistance, therefore getting up the hills a little bit better, a little bit easier.
First off, we hit a small single track descent, which apparently is very good in summer. I wouldn't know because it was covered in sheet ice.
In the summer, it's steep, it's rocky, it's got tight corners. Obviously in the snow's packed in all that sort of little undulations between the rocks, so it actually became smoother. And I was sort of thinking, I've ridden that trail a lot in the summer, and in the winter it's a completely different beast. But as you say, lots of sort of icy rocks where they're poking through the snow.
To be honest, on this, which is sort of like a bit harder packed, both bikes are equally good. Mountain bikes have a big advantage in terms of they've got suspension, which kind of helps you, keeps you in contact with the ground.
I had a bike with the RockShox Bluto, which is their fat bike specific fork. It's basically a SID, which has been widened.
Reba.
Is it a Reba? No,
It's called a Reba.
I thought it should be called a SID.
Oh well.
But we'll argue about that another time. It helped on the bigger steppy bits because despite the fact that the snow had filled in a lot of the gaps, there were still the odd step, the odd bit of rock which jutted through. While you've got a bit of undampened travel from that big tyre, the 100mm of Bluto suspension does help take the edge off it.
On our second day, we decided we'd hit some sort of powdery fields. Lucky it snowed absolutely loads overnight, so there was lots of deep, lovely powder everywhere, which is ideal if you're a skier. But as we found out, it's actually awful if you're riding a bike, and it doesn't matter what bike.
No.
Unless the gradient's super, super steep, it's so hard to get started rolling because you just end up bogging down that basically you end up just having to carry your bike through quite deep snow.
One of the trails we hit in Les Arcs on that second day was what they call Black 8, which is sort of quite a popular sort of semi-downhill run which gets ridden a lot in the summer. And certainly if you're first down there in like sort of the 2 or 3 foot of powder, at times like I guess the cutting through that powder meant your front wheel had a bit more stability, but if you're following on other people's tracks, it was still fresh snow, but you've got less sort of support for the wheel. So keeping that front wheel in the right place was pretty tricky, especially when you're covering like, you know, off-camber, snowy, icy routes.
There was a lot of tank slapping, an awful lot of tank slapping.
A lot of tripoding as well.
That's the other nice thing about riding in snow, where there's a lot of falling off.
Excellent work, Tom.
But no one got damaged.
No, apart from that, well, the bikes might have damaged bikes.
Speak for yourself.
I damaged bikes.
That's quite a nice thing. You can basically have absolutely huge high-speed crashes and just walk away from it. It's not a problem. On either bike that you're riding, as the speed got up, ideally as the gradient was getting steeper and steeper, the bikes start to actually surf on top of the snow, and then they're actually really quite easy to ride. You can sort of like kind of carve them about, and that's pretty good fun.
There's still a lot of crashing. I don't think you can avoid the fact that if you're going to ride in, you know, fresh powder snow or whatever it is, you're going to crash a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt that much. But as I say, you needed that gradient, you needed a bit of speed just to lift the front wheel up a little bit, just so you could start sort of having a bit more fun on it. Where that really came into its own was the big sort of open sort of powder fields where you could literally go anywhere you wanted.
We did find out on those sort of big open powder fields, that's where fat bikes again had another good advantage. Firstly, because you actually get going a little bit easier, and again, once they're up to speed, they just sort of float a bit nicely and a bit better control. However, once we actually hit some sort of equally snowy but steeper stuff, The big factor we found was actually bike geometry. So fat bikes are generally designed to be quite short in the top tube. They've got quite steep head angles, so that's so you get a nice upright touring position for riding across endless wastelands or whatever you want to do. Riding a very steep short bike downhill, it doesn't matter what it is, it's always going to be a pain in the arse, and that's essentially what we found.
Yeah, but then you were on your Mondraker with the forward geometry, so long front centre, short stem, wide bars, and you had quite a lot more success really on the steep stuff in some sort of situations.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to sort of maintain control, simply because when you're on that bike, you're not halfway over the bars already. Whereas on one of the fat bikes, tend to be but shorter geometry, you're already halfway to falling off before you even get going.
There are times and places where a fat bike worked. There's just not many times and not many places, especially in the UK, where you'd ever bother.
Sort of flattish, gradual stuff, yep, fat bike, definitely a resounding win for the fat bike there. Steeper technical stuff.
There's no winner.
Deep powder.
Just don't bother, just get some skis.
Don't bother, yeah, go skiing. We hope that settled the argument once and for all.